Welcome back to the program Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. To begin our conversation on Africa's collective progress through diplomacy, let's listen to the background report compiled by our correspondent, Ibrahim Danhamidu.
Africa's story is no longer one told about her, but by her. From peacekeeping missions to trade blocs and continental charters, the African voice is growing louder in world diplomacy. In a continent of over 50 nations with shared struggles and aspirations, diplomacy has become the new weapon of progress. It is how nations once divided by borders now connect through purpose, from the African Continental Free Trade Area to cross-border infrastructure and peace missions in Sudan, Mali, and the Sahel. Just this month, the League of African Ambassadors announced its official inauguration in Lusaka, Zambia, an initiative supported by African heads of state to strengthen continental solidarity and visibility on the global stage. Their mission? To reposition Africa's diplomacy as one voice, one vision, and one future. But beyond grand summits and declarations lies a deeper question. How can African diplomacy translate into prosperity for ordinary citizens? Can shared foreign policy goals lead to shared prosperity, better trade terms, technology exchange, and peace that builds rather than breaks? As the continent seeks a stronger place in global decision-making, Nigeria's role becomes pivotal. Our diplomacy rooted in peacekeeping, regional leadership, and people-centered engagement remains Africa's moral compass. Today on Good Morning Nigeria, diplomats will discuss how diplomacy can move Africa from dependence to dignity and from potential to power. Because the real strength of Africa's diplomacy is not in how loud we speak abroad, but how well we stand together at home.
Thanks, Ibrahim Danhamisu, for that background report. And now joining us to discuss Africa's collective progress through diplomacy, let me introduce here in our studio, Ambassador John Usanga. Is the Deputy Spokesperson, League of African Ambassadors. He was the former ambassador to Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. It's a pleasure to have you, Ambassador Usanga.
Thank you very much for having me, and good morning. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Africa.
All right, we have joining us via Zoom from Lusaka, Zambia, Ambassador Tony Mwita, and he's head of Media Communications, Planning Committee, League of African Ambassadors. Also former ambassador to Zambia, to the Federal Republic of Germany, with accreditation to Austria, Slovenia, and Hungary. We're very glad to have you with us, Ambassador. All right, we allow you to sip your cup of tea. Yeah. Ambassador Mukwita, if you're ready for us now, Ambassador Mukwita, are you there?
Okay. All right. Let's come back to the studio. Let's start. Let's kickstart with Ambassador Usanga, and we just want you to tell us, the primary goals of the League of African Ambassadors now that is going to be established, and how do they align the goals? How do they align with Africans' continental aspirations?
Thank you very much. For a very long time, Africa has struggled on its own because each country wanted to do its own thing. And it was also in the interest of the powers that be that each country, when a lion is trying to catch an animal, he will try to separate them. And this has been our problem in Africa. We don't have the strength to face the West individually as countries. And that has been a major hindrance. And so ambassadors just thought that we need to mobilize an overwhelming voice to ensure that we promote the interests of Africa in the world stage, so that we'll no longer, individually try to survive, but that coming together will give us that massive support that we need to lend a voice and chart policies for the advancement of Africa. And so the League came, and the objectives are not outside of what the AU is doing, but just to support what the AU is doing by mustering a force outside of the structure that will be free from interference, so that you can speak loudly and as loud as you can without being restrained by certain conditionalities. So we came together to foster the interests of Africa, and we see that we are hindered in so many ways. Trade and investment, for instance. Mm-hmm. We will never, ever achieve that trade and investment without us addressing the hindrances to trade and investment, for instance. And to be able to overcome the hindrances, we need to do what is needful. So, League of African Ambassadors will promote, for instance, connectivity. I'm not trying to, just talk about the legalese and the grammar. I'm talking about the reality of what is happening. So that when I was in Guinea-Bissau, for instance, and my country of accreditation, concurrent accreditation, was Cape Verde, sometimes I needed to go to Lisbon to be able to quickly get to Cape Verde. This should not be. Meanwhile, you could just cross in 2.5 hours here or there, but you need to go to Lisbon and then connect Cape Verde. If you needed to go to Cape Verde through Dakar, you have like a 10-hour stopover. So how do we advance trade and investment in Africa, for instance? We have to promote that connectivity so that African countries can come together if need be, even at the regional level, and see how trade and investment can be promoted through connectivity, either by air or by sea. And these are heavy investments that individual countries cannot cope.
Okay.
Our idea is to promote and support this African, interconnectivity, so that we'll be able to, advance our interest more effectively. Secondly, when ambassadors retire, or ambassadors don't actually retire because they retain the name, they go with the institutional memory. And sometimes you sit down, people are calling you for certain things because the ambassadors are no more in the system. They go with the memory, and it shouldn't be. You cannot be, for instance, a petroleum engineer, and you retire, you go to do fish farming. What happened to all the years of training? How do you bring that training to bear on the advancements of the society? We need to train and equip other people, to be able to function effectively if we are going to muster a driving force for Africa. So we seek to retain that institutional memory. We seek to advance peace and security, trade and investment, agriculture, to muster an overwhelming force of diplomacy at the world stage and promote the interests of Africa. We are not political, but we are just like, okay, can we use our connections? Can we use our experiences that we have acquired in the course of our duties to advance the interests of Africa? And that's why we came together, and with the help of the ECOSOC, AU ECOSOC, we were able to, bring this to reality. This is what we want to achieve.
So making the retired ambassador, keeping you more relevant, in the scheme of things, right?
Yeah, you could say relevance to some extent, but it's not about the ambassadors. is about the interest of Africa. Because, the group is for those who have served and left their posts, those who have retired, those who are still in service. So whether you have served as an ambassador plenipotentiary or you have served in a multilateral organization such as the UN and all that, those experiences need to be harnessed to further the interests of Africa in a world that is getting very fragmented.
Let me just get some clarifications.
Yes, please.
Before we even look at the gaps, because if you look at a league, the League of Nations, we know why the League of Nations was formed, and then how it also evolved into the United Nations, which is a platform for world countries with shared global interest and all that. In terms of Africa, we've had three phases in our evolution. There's the liberation stage, there's the post-independence, and now, of course, the multipolar world. And we have different diplomatic channels. If you look at Nigeria, our diplomatic structure may be quite different from Zambia, may be quite different from Ghana and all that. How do you hope to channel all of this, into a single collective, structure to be able to drive your expected, outcomes?
Well, I would say that diplomacy is like mathematical formula. Standards are the same everywhere. Diplomacy is more or less like, should I say, advanced PR, based on your interest. Now we're talking about collective interest. How do we harness our collective interest for the furtherance of a common interest, which is Africa, instead of each person standing alone? When you lend a diplomatic voice, you're actually, telling the world, this is what I'd like to see. It's not, this is what I want to see. This is what I would like to see for my country, for us to mutually exist and trade value for value. Because diplomacy is about trading of values. You push your interest, I push my interest. At the end of the day, we come to a point where we agree on the direction to go. So, being that it's a standard acceptable all over the world, we are able to harness the standards for common interests rather than individual interests. So we are not strangers. It's not like this one is doing chemistry, this one is doing mathematics. No. Diplomatic standards are the same across the world.
What gives this league the confidence, if for want of other words, that it will be able to achieve why I asked this question, because even riding on a broader frameworks, like the AU, like SADC, ECOWAS, coordination has not been quite easy. So how do you think you're just a league of how many for retired ambassadors?
Not retired.
Okay, former ambassadors.
Not former ambassadors.
Not former ambassadors. Both serving.
Those still at post, those serving, those who have retired, and those who have completed their tours of duty.
Yes.
Whether as ambassadors, plenipotentiaries, or ambassadors accredited to international organizations, they are all members. Whether you're serving, you're retired, you have completed your tours of duty, is immaterial.
So I'm just wondering, if ECOWAS has not been able to achieve perfect coordination, if the AU has not been able to achieve perfect coordination, if SADC has not been able to even achieve perfect coordination.
Let's go to
just hold on. Yes.
I will answer you.
Yes.
These are the gaps we are trying to fill.
Okay.
The gaps that are, look, it's so difficult to function under a very structured organization. Okay? Now, if we are coming in as a pressure group to point the way to go. Okay. If you look at the problem, it's not like ECOWAS has not achieved anything. The problem is that ECOWAS' attention is mostly directed to defense and security. For instance,
trade, economic integration, and trade.
I'm coming. Yeah. Meanwhile, ECOWAS was set up as an economic community.
Yeah.
But what are the problems being tackled now? Have we had that freedom of movement of trade
That's true.
and investment?
But the free
They are
protocol
there.
is there,
They are,
which is
all
facilitating
those
movement.
protocols are there, but how many of those protocols have we picked and enforced? It will come together. It's very easy for us to mobilize for trade, security and defense, because everybody has to be safe. Everybody must protect himself. If we use the same zeal that we exhibit for security and defense, for instance, we use the same zeal to mobilize trade and investment, we will go so very far. But we are not we are not giving it the priority we are supposed to give. For instance, if there's a slight problem now anywhere in West Africa, I'm talking of ECOWAS now, give it 2-3 weeks. Something will be done to make sure that that thing is checkmated. But we are not using the same zeal for trade and investment, which is what will really, really affect. So we have a common interest as ambassadors because we have been in the field and we have seen the hindrances, we've seen the gaps, and we are seeking to fill those gaps, to draw the various governments' attention to what needs to be done to advance our common purpose, which is the general well-being of
The
Africans.
continent.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Usanga. Let's go to our Zoom guest from Lusaka, Zambia, talking about Ambassador Tony Mukwita, who is the head of Media Communications Planning Committee, League of African Ambassadors. Ambassador Mukwita, good morning and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. I am most gratified to be with you this morning on NTA.
All right. Thank you so much. It's good to have you join us as well.
I was sipping a cup of tea when we first came to you.
All right. Just going in line with the...
From about 6 o'clock in the morning, I didn't realize the time difference.
Oh.
So it's actually not tea, but coffee just to keep me awake.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. What's the time difference? Okay. All right. Just going in line with the narrative of Ambassador Usanga, we're trying to get you as the spokesperson, the head of Media Communications Planning Committee for the League of African Ambassadors. Tell us the role you think that the League of Ambassadors will play, especially in promoting Africa's collective progress through diplomacy, especially redefining, the narrative about the continent.
Thank you very much. Small correction. I am only a small fly on the wall of the Planning Committee of Zambia. So I am not the continental spokesperson of the League of African Ambassadors. I am the head of the media team in the Planning Committee of Zambia by virtue of just being lucky enough to be in a country where the League of African Ambassadors was registered. And, I have been watching the interview when such eloquent people such as Ambassador His Excellency Usanga have spoken. It's a bit difficult to walk through the steps. It's a tall order. But looking at the topic that you have already outlined, collective progress through diplomacy, there is a lot of things that the League of African Ambassadors can do. And from where I am standing, or rather seated in Lusaka, we see lots of things that the League of African Ambassadors can do to complement what consecutive and several other governments are already doing very, very well. We realize that we have ambassadors that are already in office, as Ambassador Usanga already put it succinctly and poignant. We are not taking away anybody's cake. We are not taking away anybody's cheese. We are simply trying to complement the good works in diplomacy that are already on the roll and on the go. And these roles include issues such as extending greater diplomacy in the countries that we were privileged to serving. Like, for instance, I served in the Scandinavian countries, in Sweden, and I served, my last posting was in Germany, and several other ladies and gentlemen that served in several places. We should be able to collectively put our experience to help, because only we have that experience. Let me give you an example of the current ambassador of the United States of America to the state of Israel. That is Mr. Mike Huckabee. He was a presidential candidate in the United States of America, but the experience he had gained through the Senate and through several assignments in public service, the current president saw it fit that instead of pushing him into the archives, perhaps the great thing to do is to deploy him into the foreign service, not just because he is Jewish himself, but that Jewish credential that he has adds value for the United States of America in their own way, in one way or another, in order to make things smoother between the United States of America and Israel. It is the same thing that happens in the army. I think His Excellency Ambassador Usanga mentioned this, that ambassadors do not retire. They simply retire from the missions that they serve. We'll give you an example of the service, the national service, the army. The older you get into the service, that's how you become generals. And when generals leave that office, instead of being retired to the archives, their substantive countries always call upon them to see what wisdom they can lend, either to peacekeeping or peace enforcement. And that is what the League of African Ambassadors is coming with. And it is not a totally new concept. There is League of Ambassadors, retired ambassadors in the United States of America. There is similar organizations of European Union ambassadors, and there is a lot others in other jurisdictions. So Ambassador Usanga, myself and my colleagues in Zambia, led by the current president, His Excellency Ominyi Nwane, a Nigerian gentleman of noble diplomacy creed, who was very influential in registering this organization here in Zambia, have decided that when duty calls, we should be around. Like they say in the Bible, God saves all the biggest battles to the toughest soldiers. And at the moment, we see ourselves as those soldiers, Ambassador Usanga and the rest of the other team that we have. That's what I can say in introductory remarks, sir.
Excellent, excellent, Your Excellency, Ambassador Mwita. And I dare say that, you said you are a small fly in the team, but a fly may be small, but its presence is very, very impossible to resist. If they stops you until it gets noticed and it gets the attention it deserves. So you may be a small fly, but definitely your presence cannot be ignored. Having said that, yes, I do. Anyway, just to further His Excellency Ambassador Sanga's contribution to my question, he did say that there are gaps, that the league, members of the league have identified gaps within the broader diplomatic framework, on the continent, talking about the AU, the ECOWAS, and the SADC, in terms of achieving a unified diplomatic coordination. And I'm just going to ask you, can you give us an insight or outline briefly for us what those gaps are? What do you think are the gaps that you now want to fill? Is it in terms of political will? Is it in terms of maybe divergent national interest? I mean, we know within the continent our interests, foreign policy interests are quite different. So what do you think are these gaps? Institutional capacity or what?
Let me give you an example since you asked for something specific. We have had a number of political differences that require diplomacy. So, for instance, we have had political differences in various African countries. I can competently speak for the Southern African Development Corporation, SADC, because I am here in SADC. And I know, I'm perfectly sure, Ambassador Usanga can do the same for ECOWAS. But here is a scenario, say country called Zaire, non-existent, this is for argument's sake, has an election. After that election, two parties, number one and number two, feeling that the election was not free and fair. What we have seen in the past is instead of the League of African Ambassadors coming together to say, how can we find a diplomatic or political solution to this? We have unfortunately seen the European delegation come to save poor Africa, poor Zambia, poor Malawi. Instead of having the League of African Ambassadors, given all the experience that we have had the Commonwealth Secretariat, and I have nothing against them at all. But you have a lady, very respected, noble, called Patricia Scotland, to come and sort out the differences. When a president or an opponent has been jailed, or detained, instead of having this group that has worked round the clock to ensure that there is a diplomatic closure to all this, we've had people from the past. Now, it is a deep belief of the League of African Ambassadors that we should be in a position to amicably intervene because of the experience that we have, the years that we have, and the networks that we have forged. If there is a problem between Zambia and Nigeria, if there is a problem between Zambia and Zimbabwe, if there is a problem between Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire, we should be calling upon Ambassador Usanga. We shouldn't be calling upon the Commonwealth in London. We should be able to rise to the plate and sort out our problems, enhance diplomacy, both politically and economically, because we own that problem and we own the solutions by the virtue fact that we are the nationals. But apart from being the nationals, we have lived through the experience to know how we can sort out these issues. Because in any case, even if you bring in the Commonwealth to Nigeria or to Guinea-Bissau, where my brother, Ambassador Usanga was, the first point of call would be Ambassador Usanga. They will ask him, what is the problem? How do you think we will sort it? And then later on go ahead to claim the credit. So, Madam, I think it's basically saying that we should own our problems and we should own the solutions and not pass them on. But above all, we should be looking at positivity. We shouldn't be looking that we have problems. We should be looking at how can we enhance this diplomacy in order to make sure that we have a positivity around ourselves instead of a sorry basket case.
Ambassador Mukwita, there, we should own our problems and we should have the solutions to be able to address these challenges. Thank you. We'll get back to you in the course of this conversation. Let's come back to the studio where we still have Ambassador Usanga. Earlier on, you talked about the challenges actually confronting the continent, especially in terms of security, climate, economic, and other challenges like that. So what exactly, how do you think this league will be able to help to address, these challenges, especially, to collaborate to tackle, these common issues of security, climate change, economic development?
Well, I will speak from my experience. When I was in Guinea-Bissau, I looked at the environment, for instance. Everybody was doing his own thing, but I thought, how do you make a difference? For instance, how do you make the earth better? Because we are supposed to live it better. What is our mission in this place? Is it just to come together, drink wine, go back? So the first thing we did was talk to our fellow ECOWAS ambassadors and said, we have this privilege to make a difference. Can we just come together and hold meetings and decide what we can do? At the end of the day, ECOWAS ambassadors were able to do a lot. Medical outreach, things like that. We cooperated. I looked at the opportunities. I'm speaking practically because theories will not help us. I looked at the opportunities in Guinea-Bissau. I looked at the land, virgin, good land. I looked at the interests of other nations in Guinea-Bissau. And I looked at the influence of Nigeria as a major player in ECOWAS. And I said, no, this cannot be. So the first thing we did was to put together a trade and investment forum to expose the opportunities in Guinea-Bissau first to Africans. Okay. And we did an entirely African thing. We had we call it Bissau Rising. And it was sponsored by the UNDP, fully sponsored. It became a rallying point for investors. We brought in investors from all over Nigeria, South Africa, and all that. We said we're going to do African thing. And some of those people, especially people from Nigeria, they went in, registered their businesses, and they took taking opportunities. So now, this is the practical way of influencing things. Mm-hmm. If you look at a gap, for instance, the opportunities in Nigeria, can we jointly execute projects? We are trying to establish, for instance, you cannot be an African, a West African, for instance, and be importing onions from somewhere else, or tomatoes, or carrots, when we have it wasted elsewhere. You are importing from somewhere else because those people are able to give you on-time delivery. So what can we do? The only thing we can do is to find a way to connect these other African countries to be able to exchange. There's nothing wrong with Nigeria feeding the world from here. There's nothing, if you want to do tomatoes, for instance, or onions that are wasted in some places, there's nothing wrong with moving those products and sharing them in other places. There's nothing wrong in joint exploration of the mineral resources because each country may not have the capacity to do it on its own. So, to be able to fill that gap, ambassadors, they have a network interacting with different groups of people, and they are trusted. League of African Ambassadors will be trusted. For instance, in conflict resolution, could be trusted better than government because those in conflict, for instance, might be thinking that the government trying to intervene is aligned to somewhere, but the league is neutral. So when the league comes in for more or less like a judge in a matter that is brought before him. And is dispassionate, tells you the truth, not because you are aligned to somebody, but because you want to make sure that the African governance system and everything is properly, guided and making sure that everybody lives in peace. So We are promoting our common interest by identifying those areas of strength that we can mobilize as Africans and bringing it to the fore to government, helping the government to push those policies that will advance our interest. There's no point to stand alone. We are Africans, but we understand that it is in our interest to stand together, because we will not be able to survive the next line of action the world is towing. That's why you find people, of course, Europe doesn't need to come together. They're already okay.
They're already one.
But they are together. Why? Because they want to muster and foster a common interest to be able to cope with the changing environment. So we cannot just sit back and expect people to do things for us. And I always tell people, look, the first point of deliverance is to identify that there's a problem. And what's the problem? When you see that problem, address it squarely. And to address that problem squarely means we have to come together and put our problems on the table, chart a course. There are many things we can do together. For instance, in Nigeria, we can feed the world with rice because we have the capacity. We want to establish aviation, for instance. South Africa, at least they assemble planes. So why can't we harness what we have together? I'm talking about the economy now, economically.
Yeah.
Why can't we harness what we have and ensure that at least we solve one problem of connectivity? If maritime connectivity is expensive, can two countries come together, pool resources, give it to a neutral company to manage the resources? These are some of the practical things that we need to do as Africans, because the world is getting fragmented. Everybody is minding his own interest. But we can't survive individually. Our key point is individually we are powerless, but together we will muster strength to have a voice, make it louder.
Ambassador Sanga, thank you. These are things that are on the table. I mean, they're out there. A lot of people, everyone knows that these gaps exist. But in terms of global trade and security, you've talked about the interests of the League in enhancing trade and investment. I know that Africa's relevance in this area is also increasing by it, especially with the AFCTA on board and now. So in terms of strategy, how you intend to drive this renewed push, for more impetus in the area of trade, what are you riding on? What kind of diplomatic strategy are you going to ride on now that is quite different? We now see, soft power diplomacy is on. We know some countries will prefer what they call quiet diplomacy, where you just, meet, have a dialogue, and then, others are going digital. They want to, use the media, digital diplomacy. So what are you riding on, to achieve this?
What is reigning in the world?
So many things.
Technology.
Like I said, yes, there's also
technology, industrialization. There's no basis for us to export raw materials when we can add value to raw materials in Africa. Even if we don't have the capacity, we can tell the people taking our resources, come set up here.
Okay.
Yes, you can transfer the technology to indigenous persons, and in a few years, they can stand on their own. In this country, for instance, we used to assemble cars. I remember as a child we had Volkswagen, we had Leia, we had all those cars assembled here. Where are those plants? We just sit back and expect people to spoon feed us. I'm sorry to use that word. It doesn't happen. After a while, the people get tired of feeding you for free. So what do? Teach me to fish, and I will survive. What are they doing to advance their interest? Copy it if you don't have it, especially technology. And they are moving away, the world is moving away from the conventional technology to AI. Where are we on it? I'll give you an example. There's I don't know, in Jos, they used to manufacture vaccines. In fact, COVID-19 should have taught us a major lesson in Africa to wake up and work together. Because when the vaccines were brought out, Africa was not in consideration. And I will say it took a lot of pressure and pressure and pressure for the vaccines to be shared among Africans. Whereas if we had concentrated our effort jointly, we would have had something. And that thing is very scary because as technology is improving, Africa will be left behind unless we wake up to the realities of the time. And the realities of the times are that new technologies will displace predominantly, personalized work. So where are we in it? That is for the economy. When we talk of common defense, for instance, and we are saying we can live together in peace. Yes, we can live together in peace because we are Africans. If we can mobilize a voice to tell our brothers, our fellow Africans, that we are one and that we need to function as one and not be influenced by external forces to separate us, I think we can do better. Because it's easy for someone to trust a neutral person than to trust another person who is aligned somewhere. And so the League of African Ambassadors can come in and begin to talk to the two parties. They are talking of soft diplomacy. And soft diplomacy is what drives. Because we can't be quarreling. We are sitting down, we are drinking tea together, and we are brainstorming. How was the League birthed? Through soft diplomacy. So we sit down, and you find out that the policy makers of this country are individual persons. Take away the structure. If I take a decision now that binds on Nigeria, and the decision is wrong, what happens? But if I mobilize my experience and the experiences of other people based on my exposure, then I should be able to take a decision that will augur well for the interests of Nigeria. These are the areas that we need to cover as ambassadors because we have interacted with people, with different kinds of people in different environments, and we have acquired experiences that we could mobilize to solve our problems in the African way. There will still be hindrances, but we need to push up to a certain point. We need to train and equip young people who will take over from us so that they will be prepared for the next world.
Let me just chip in again because while you were talking, this thought came to me because I like the Pan-African, idea. Yeah. This is something, in those days, Ghana used to be known for, the Pan-Africanism and all that. It's good, but again, within the context of ECOWAS, we've been trying to achieve a Pan-ECOWAS, ECOWAS of people by unifying our currency, by unifying our union and all that. But it hasn't been easy because of each member state's national interest pulling us. How do you hope to resolve this in case it creeps into, the league? Because the league is made up of, ambassadors from different countries with different national interests.
I understand. Everything boils down to external influences. He that pays the piper dictates the tune. Why have we not got common currency? The facts are very obvious. Because there are some external forces that are pushing that their currency should be the common currency. And other people are saying, no, we must have something neutral. So if I come to the table free from influence, somebody is not sponsoring me for anything, somebody is not dishing out things, I'll be able to talk freely. And so we are telling Africans, the dependence on external dishes, I don't even know. External crumbs that fall from the table is not helping us. Let's think of homegrown African solutions to our problems. We will break free. But that's why we have not been able to achieve. Okay, why do I achieve success in defense and security? For instance, at least when I was in Guinea-Bissau, I received the Nigerian contingent twice. Within a short period of events happening. It wasn't even up to a month when that thing happened. The African countries came together and they mobilized. So why do we do that? I'm saying if we use the same zeal for defense and security to address economic problems, we will make a headway.
Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador Usanga. We'll make a headway. Let's bring in Ambassador Mukwita now, because I still want him to talk on this issue of, balancing the diverse interests and priorities of different African countries and regions, because it's a major, major challenge. We also want to remind our viewers that you can contribute to this discussion by sending us your questions and your comments so that our guests can respond to them. Ambassador Mukwita, it's over to you.
Kindly just summarize your question again. The internet broke off a little bit there.
Okay. We are looking at, the issue of trying to balance the diverse interests and priorities of different African countries and regions, because that has been the major, major challenge, looking at the fact that we've not been able to have this common currency, just like Ambassador Usanga, talked about. Okay, I think he's freezing. Well, okay, let's have. We have this comments from one of our viewers, Chike Dim from Warri, Delta State. Maybe Ambassador Usanga, maybe you respond to this. He said, Africa has yet to fully harness the transformative power of interconnectivity amongst its states. A key factor contributing to Europe's development lies in its seamless diplomatic relations and collaborative efforts towards common goals. These strong interstate connections have yielded numerous benefits for virtually all European countries. It's essential for Africans to recognize the value of such regional cooperation and work towards fostering similar ties, unlocking the continent's vast potential for growth and development.
Yeah, it still boils down to what I've said. Until we're able to establish that connectivity, we may not be able to function or trade effectively. This Africa Continental Free Trade Area will still remain on paper. What is going to drive it is, of course, we have to have interconnectivity of roads, road networks among African countries. Starting with ECOWAS. But the major problem has been, okay, Nigeria can do from one point to the other point. Can the next country take it from there to the next country? The capacities are different. That's why we are saying, let's not look at individual capacities. Let's see how we can mobilize and achieve this. Even if we don't have the benefit in our generation, we leave something better for the future so that goods and services can move freely. People can move freely. And then there's also this fear of being overwhelmed by smaller countries. For instance, a small country can think that if you open up the space, Nigeria being such a big place will overwhelm them. And it's not. It's an unfounded imputation, So what we need, because all this trade, opening up infrastructural development is very, very expensive. It's capital intensive. And individual countries will not be able to do it. There are some countries that have the capacity. That's why you see some countries doing roads and rails everywhere. I don't want to single out a particular country. But these roads and rails that they are building for us Nothing is free. But if we mobilize our resources, we have so much on the African soil. Each country has so much
Okay.
gold, diamond, just name it, that is feeding the whole world.
Okay.
Okay, we
So
have.
if we exploit it ourselves
Okay.
or add value to it, we'll be able to do so many things.
I like that you are talking about ourselves, a homegrown solution.
Exactly.
And I would put my next question to His Excellency Ambassador Mukwita. But Onyekachi Chibuzo has sent us a message. She wants to know how he or she can join the African League. I don't know if Onyekachi is an ambassador. It's either a serving or former ambassador. Onyekachi, you need to tell us. So if you are I mean, have ambassadorial ambition. I don't know. Those with ambassadorial ambition, can they also be member? I don't think so. But
Okay,
let's
go
bring
to
in
Zoom now,
yes,
so
let's
that you
bring
can
in
respond to
Ambassador
the
Mukwita.
question.
Yes, Ambassador Mukwita. I mean, I'm just like wondering how we can translate all of this into homegrown actionable plans, because His Excellency has said, look, we're looking for homegrown solution to our African issues. Does it mean that there'll be less interaction or interface between Africans and diaspora investors? And is it possible to I don't want to say eliminate, to prevent external impact in whatever you do?
Thank you very much, Madam. I will try my best because of the erratic and constantly freezing internet, which is one of the problems we should be discussing as the League of African Ambassadors, because I think if we cannot communicate easily as Africa, then we do not have a snowball's chance in hell or in Africa to develop. I think it is Africa's richest man happens to be Nigerian, Mr. Aliko Dangote, who is widely quoted to have complained about the fact that he needs at least 30 or 32 or even 35 visas before he can crisscross Africa in order to seal one cement deal in Zambia's Chilanga, another one in the DRC, and another one in Swaziland or South Africa. So these are some of the issues that the League of African Ambassadors should be able to say, I had a good work relationship with Ambassador Usanga in Guinea. This is their crowning glory. How can we work on it to cut corners or to short circuit in order to work much faster? And the other issue is I did almost 10 years in Europe. Never once did I have to present a passport for it to be stamped because everything was computerized, and also they have a system that works very well called the Schengen visa. So that makes ease of movement. You may be wondering why I'm talking about Schengen visas and Mr. Aliko Dangote, but I think this goes to touch back a little bit on what Ambassador Usanga just said a few minutes ago, and this is about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. It is one of the things that the League of African Ambassadors can try to accelerate, can try to give a steroid boost in order to ensure that we reduce poverty and we create jobs on the continent. I mean, it is not very good to speak about a continent of 1.4 billion people, whom more than 60% live in abject poverty. And the entire GDP of the continent is probably about 1.8 trillion. When we have a country like China with about $11 trillion in GDP, we have the United States of America, the richest country on the whole earth, with about $27 trillion GDP. The disparity is too huge. The gap, the divide between the haves and the have-nots in Africa, compared to whom we have to trade with, even before we go out of the continent, is a little bit high. And again, forgive me if I digress, but it's because we were having that frozen internet moment, which I think should be corrected if we have to enhance our economic growth and reduce poverty. We've got a youthful population. And I think the League of African Ambassadors...
Tony Mokwita, we're sorry, we just have to pause you right there because of our time. Thank you so much for your contribution on today's conversation. Ambassador Tony Mokwita is head of Media Communications Planning Committee in the Zambia. Thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you. All right, okay, thank you. Let's come back to Ambassador Usanga. Just parting shot in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
What are some of the obstacles that the leagues likely to face, and how do you intend to resolve them?
Yeah, one of the obstacles we have is visa to move freely. And that we have already overcome in the case of Zambia.
Okay.
Because I don't need to apply and wait for 2 weeks. All I need is a letter from them to enable me board the plane, and I get my visa at the point of delivery. It's progress for us.
Okay.
So if we can open up the space for Africans to move freely, I think we'll do better.
All right. Thank you so much. Open up the space for Africans to move from Lagos to Nairobi to Addis Ababa. Thank you so much. Ambassador John Usanga, Deputy Spokesperson, League of African Ambassadors, former Nigerian ambassador to Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we return, our second discussion on the vaccine drive will commence. Stay with us.